all about drugs, getting drugs, using drugs, lying, lie, not telling the truth to get drugs, buying, selling drugs, using drugs. And I think about how I felt at that time. I was lost. I didn't want anybody to know. I didn't want anybody to know where I was really at. So I walk into my first Narcotics Anonymous meeting, which was in the basement of a church. Now, I know we have all different religions on this Zoom meeting today. I'm Jewish. Going into a church, I was in a church once in my life, and that was for a wedding. So I didn't know anything about a church, and I walk into the church basement, and I look over, and there at the podium, I don't know how, Israeli meetings are. Some of our meetings, you might have a podium, and the chair will stand at the podium and do all the readings. And I look over at the podium, and it's my neighbor across the street. And I didn't know it then, but that was God introducing me to my new life. I didn't recognize it. I was embarrassed. I wanted to turn around and run out of the room. But he saw me. And, there was a room full of people in the basement of this church. And he came over to me and he gave me a hug, which I thought was really weird to begin with. Like, what's this guy hugging me for? I mean, he was my neighbor, and I never hugged him, in the years that we had been neighbors. And he said, "I thought you were one of us." And I thought, what do you mean you thought I'm one of you? Who are you? What do you mean? I'm not like you. The only reason I'm here is to get my ex-wife off my back, get her off my back. And I'm not coming here to get clean. I don't know what his problem was, but I knew that I was just here to placate her. And I stayed for the meeting and met some people, listened to what they had to say. And I did recognize that some of the readings seemed to be written for me. Most of us don't have to think twice. We live to use and use to live. I mean, these words resonate today with me. And I remember leaving the meeting, and I don't know, I was uplifted. It was an uplifting experience. I didn't make any friends there. My neighbor hugged me again, which I thought was weird. Everyone got in a circle and did the serenity prayer and hugged, and I thought that was weird. Some people talked about God, and I thought that was weird. So that was the first day I had gone home, and I did not use in many, 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 many days, months. And I don't know why I didn't use, but I didn't. The next day I went to another meeting because I'm told you're supposed to go to several meetings, and some people were getting sheets signed, and I thought, yeah, that will get my wife off my back, sign a sheet, show her I'm going to meetings. Went to the Tuesday night meeting, same church in the basement. It was like a different crowd of people. And I was like, where did everybody go from yesterday? I didn't understand what Narcotics Anonymous was or what I was getting into. And I went home that night and I got high. I must not have been as motivated. And the Wednesday I came back, and I don't know, it was one of those things where I'll never forget 25 years plus later that I was going to go get some dope for my cousin that night after the meeting. And I looked at the dope and I didn't like it and I didn't buy it. And I did not go home and get high that night either. So 2 out of 3 nights I didn't use. Then that Thursday, I go to again another meeting, same church. And I guess I just wasn't motivated. And I went home, got high. I did not come to Narcotics Anonymous to get clean. I had no intention of getting clean, but I wanted to get the monkey off my back. I was hurting. Nobody wanted to get high with me because I was too bizarre. my behavior, my attitude, my paranoia. And if you can relate to any of this, you understand I was hitting a bottom. And I got to interject, I had a 4.5-year-old beautiful daughter. And even that couldn't get me to stop using. Even that, I would be resentful that I had to babysit for my own child. And I'm embarrassed by that today. And I'm okay with it. It's what it was. But it's embarrassing. It just shows how the drugs had me. I couldn't get away from them. I never thought I'd ever get clean. So that Thursday, I go home and I get high. And now comes the weekend. Well, I'm not going to attend any Narcotics Anonymous meetings on the weekend. I didn't know why anyone would do that. The weekend was for partying. But something about that Friday, that weekend, I said to myself that I wanted to prove once that I could stay clean for a weekend, that I wouldn't use. Just once, that I could stay clean. And I don't know, I went and called a bunch of numbers that they wrote down on the back of my meeting list on that Friday, and no one answered. And I thought, see those suckers, they gave me their numbers and they're not going to answer the phone. You know, I just wanted to reach out. And Saturday, I did the same thing and I didn't get any response. And finally, I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to stay clean this weekend. One weekend. Just one weekend. I just wanted to prove to myself I could do it. And of course, my wife at the time was watching me. She was so sick and tired of being sick and tired of watching me day in, day out, get high, lie, steal money from our budget. And I don't have to tell any of you any of this because you might not have done the exact same thing, but you did something similar. And by the way, all of this, I should explain, I was a public school teacher with 2 degrees. It doesn't matter what degrees you have, what knowledge you have, the disease of addiction, if you're in it, you're in it. And you can't think your way out of it, and you can't be too smart for it because it's way stronger and way smarter than we are. So Sunday came and I took my daughter to Hebrew school, and, you know, I came home that Sunday and I just said, I'm not going to get high one more day. But, you know, during the week, I was going to go back to work. I knew that I would, you know, partake in some drug use. This was not going to last. Again, I had no intention of ever staying clean. Happy, joyous, and free. Not even close. I was miserable. But I have to admit, something about not using that weekend, I got a little hope of something like, but I have to tell you, if anyone can remember, or if you've been through any withdrawals lately or recently, they're not fun. My body ached. I felt like I had the flu. So Monday I went to work. I came home, got ready, and went to the Monday night meeting. And I was kind of complaining to a few of the people that gave me their number. And they explained to me the reason they didn't answer was they were at meetings all weekend. I thought, wow, that's interesting. And I got some hugs, and the hugs actually felt pretty good. And people told me they were really glad to see me, that they weren't sure I would come back. You know, and at that time, I could tell everyone that I had 3 days clean. Well, I went home, and I did not get high that day. In fact, the last time that I got high was that Thursday night. Little did I know that I would start to believe in and get immersed in the fellowship. But I wasn't like all of you anyway, and I was never going to get a sponsor, and I was never going to go to meetings all the time. It wasn't going to happen. That wasn't going to be me. I was married. Yes, the marriage was terrible, and yes, I had caused so many issues. And yes, I had a child, and I had no intention at that point of staying clean. None. But I kept going to meetings, and I went to a meeting every day. And we all know that during this time of COVID, and I don't know, in Israel, there may be a couple of live meetings, meeting outdoors. There may be none. In my area, in Michigan, in the United States, some meetings have opened back up, and it's summertime here. So, people are meeting outdoors. There's a couple of indoor meetings, but everything is Zoom. Everything is virtual. You can't get a hug on a virtual meeting, or can you? And the truth is, I have found these Zoom meetings and the NA phone meetings to be amazing, and amazing people, amazing addicts sharing their story. And now I go to a meeting every day, and it's been incredible. It's been truly an incredible experience. So I stopped using, I kept going to meetings every day, and then I took on a service position. And I've got to tell you about service. You want to talk about happy, joyous, and free? Doing service gets us out of ourselves. And I became a coffee maker, which I still contend is the most important position in any NA meeting, because addicts love their coffee. And if you're a good coffee maker and you get there early enough, people enjoy it, and they'll thank me for the coffee. And I started feeling a part of. But I still was not going to get a sponsor. That didn't make any sense to me. Find somebody I could call and confide in, somebody to help me work the steps. That just still seemed really weird. But I liked the meetings, and people shared. And Brian mentioned that I met him in the Detroit area at a meeting. And I've met some of the best people that I've ever met in Narcotics Anonymous. You want to talk about happy, joyous, and free. When we learn to live the program, and we learn to work these steps, and by the way, I finally did get a sponsor. It took me 8 weeks, and I'll tell you, I called that sponsor every day. I was desperate. I didn't make up my mind yet that I didn't want to use, but everybody told me if I got a sponsor and I called that sponsor, I probably wouldn't use. Somebody said recently at a meeting, I'm reminded of a statement, a grateful addict does not use. If you've got gratitude, you don't feel like ruining your life again. So I got a sponsor, and I got to tell you, I had the same sponsor for 21 years, and he's been ill off and on, and I found that I needed a new sponsor that was available. I mean, he was not as available, and he was sick a lot, and it was, and we're still friends, and I still call him, and we still talk, and we still talk about steps, and we still communicate, and but I needed a sponsor who was going to be able to be there. And so I'm only on my second sponsor in 25 years, because I was told that it's not about him, because a lot of times you get a new sponsor because your sponsor did this or that. Well, it's my responsibility to call him. It is not the sponsor's responsibility to call me. It's my responsibility to seek my recovery. I'm responsible for me. And I don't have to tell anyone on this Zoom meeting today, if you sponsor somebody, every time you get a call from a sponsee, your heart glows. Maybe that is the strongest service that we do. Our book says one addict helping another is without parallel, and that is a fact. 25 years later, I need all of you as much as I needed people back then. I just couldn't admit it back then. I continued, by the way, when you talk about happy, joyous, and free, are you kidding me? Because that is my topic. As you start doing service work, and I became a secretary, and I was responsible for opening the meeting, and then I became a treasurer, and I was responsible for the money that the meeting brought in and distributing it where the group conscious at our business meeting said to distribute it. And I took that very seriously and had to keep track of everything in a ledger and the area service work. Now, I got to tell you, if anyone has done any area service, oh, that's a difficult service. And that's where our traditions are really tested. That's where our recovery is truly tested. Patience, tolerance, area service. And I'm not saying it wasn't a worthwhile couple of year commitment that I made. And I attended those area meetings. They were on Sundays here once a month. Was the second Sunday of every month. And I became more immersed and part of the fellowship. And I realized somewhere around 9 months that I really didn't want to use again. It took 9 months after destroying my life in every way I could. I mean, even my family was fed up. I remember going to my brother's house so high on Rosh Hashanah. I use the word I'm embarrassed. I'm not, it's okay with me that I had these experiences. It's what makes me who I am today. I think of another embarrassing one, talk about happy, joyous, and free. My younger brother had a birthday party and we were meeting. And before the birthday party, I was busy getting high and I threw up all over myself. You want to talk about disgusting? I run into the bathroom of the restaurant. I clean off the best I can. What, my family didn't look at me and know what was happening? My mother once told me that she was sure I was going to die of drugs and that she just accepted it. There was nothing she could do. And there's nothing I can do for any of you on this line. I cannot save any of you. I can tell you can reach out to me. I can give you my phone number. I can give you my email. You can text me, call me. I'm here for anyone that wants it. And I learned that I can only keep what I have by giving it away. I have to give it away. And that's service work and sponsorship. And I have this sponsorship family that's incredible. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has an NA sponsor who has an NA sponsor who has an NA sponsor. And I'll call it the head of our family, just celebrated 60 years in Florida. 60 years. And I'm really grateful. I'll talk about gratitude. You want to talk about happy, joyous, and free? Do a gratitude list and you'll find out, yeah, I really do have it pretty well. It reminds me of my first 4th step. And any of you that have worked a 4th step out of the NA It Works How and Why Step Study Guide, I think it's called. You know, there's a lot of questions, 80 some questions. And we talk about resentments and fear and everything. And we get into it and we write and it's not supposed to be about how bad we are, but you know, our character defects become glaring to us. We're getting ready to work a 6th and 7th step. They become glaring, and then you get to this section of assets. And I remember on my first First four step, I wrote 64 pages on everything, and I wrote one asset, and that was that I had energy. I was a person of energy. I couldn't see that I was a valuable person even then, with a couple years clean. Oh, I was feeling better, but I didn't feel like I was, something special, or I couldn't see all the things that I did, the help that I did, the service that I did, and how important that was. Talk about a growth experience. Sit down with your sponsor, work a 4-step. It will be one of the changing things of your recovery in your life. And working these steps, I know we all have little different ways of working steps, and each sponsor has a little different way. And Narcotics Anonymous, I love to tell you about our literature, written in I forget how many languages, is amazing. Our literature is amazing, written by addicts for addicts. I was at a seminar where these two guys talked about the history of the writing of the basic text. Could you imagine being in 1980, traveling from all over the country to meet in, I forgot exactly where they were, Georgia or Tennessee, and you put 25 addicts in a room to try to agree, and they went line by line by line, and if they couldn't agree on a line, it was out, and then they would revisit it. I know literature may be a little different now. I don't know personally whether some of our newer books are written by addicts or if they're written with the support of addicts. But it's amazing. Our literature is amazing. And I encourage you to read it. And I encourage you on those lonely nights and those tough times to read the recovery and relapse chapter. Just because you relapse doesn't make it the end. It could be the beginning. However, we've had several deaths. This disease does not discriminate. It does not care who you are. It does not care what religion you are, what color you are. It doesn't care about your beliefs. It doesn't care whether you're rich or poor, male or female. It doesn't care what country you're in. We've had a couple of deaths recently in my area in Michigan. Somebody just wanting to go out one more time. And I had a year and a half ago it was so sad and so difficult to go to our step study group, study steps, and to go pull up to my sponsor's house. And there's some police there, and I'm wondering, well, gee, I wonder what the heck happened, and his son had died of a drug overdose, 35 years old, supposedly had 2.5 years clean. Don't use. I promise this. If you use, all your misery comes back. It all comes back. So I know I have a few more minutes, and now I can tell you that for the most part, I'm happy, joyous, and free. I have a God of my misunderstanding, as I call it. You can have the God of your understanding. I have a God of my misunderstanding that guides me, because I don't understand God. And if you do, that's great. I don't. So I call it the God of my misunderstanding. But I know several things that God wants from me. God does not want me to use drugs. God does not want me to hurt myself. God does not want me to hurt others. And God wants me to be of service, not just to people in Narcotics Anonymous, but to my neighbors, to people I meet, to somebody at the grocery store who can't reach to the top shelf to get something. That I'm of service to all. And I've learned that here in Narcotics Anonymous. I learned about being a giving, caring person. Because when I walked in here, I was not happy, joyous, and free. I was not giving and caring. I wanted me, 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 me. It was all about me. And the only reason I cared about you was if you had dope, I wanted some of it. And I wanted to know your connection. And if it was good enough, I wanted that connection too. And now I don't want anything from anybody. I want you to not use. I want you to get the help. We're here to help. Addicts are amazing, brilliant people. I'm not saying we don't do dumb things. I'm not saying that every day in my life is a perfect day. I'm not saying that I don't get depressed sometimes or I'm hurt or that I don't get angry. But I have steps that help me. So step 10, we continue to take personal inventory. And when we're wrong, promptly admitted it. When I hurt somebody, I have to make amends for that. My step 10 is now, what do I want to do again that I did yesterday? What don't I want to repeat? And are there any changes I want to make? And that's my step 10. And I do that every single day. Today, my relationships are strong. I'm not saying I don't have family conflicts. If you have brothers, sisters, you know. If you're in a perfect family, that's great. My family is not perfect, but I can tell you that we love each other, and the bottom line is about love. I can tell you that I don't want to use again today, and the best defense against using is going to a meeting, making 3 phone calls a day. I don't know who told me that. I heard it at a meeting. Contact 3 NA members a day. If for some reason you can't make a meeting or your sponsor's not available, call 3 people. And I still, 25 years later, and if my sponsor was sitting next to me, he would tell you I still call him 5-6 times a week. But I no longer am always calling because I need something. I'll call to check up on him. How is he doing? How is his wife doing? She had a hip surgery, hip replacement. It's not all about me anymore. It's not all about me. So today I can tell you that I'm very happily married, and I have an amazing respect and caring and love for my wife and for my friends. And don't get me wrong, people in NA are just human beings, and they will piss us off, and they'll do things that upset us. And sometimes they'll mean it, sometimes they won't. So anyway, Happy, Joyous, and Free is all about coming to this program, getting clean and staying clean, getting through those tough times, having the gratitude. And are you kidding me? Absolutely not kidding you. If you don't feel happy, joyous, and free, I can't promise what you're going to get, but you stick around here. You talk to people in the program, you become involved, and it's amazing. I thank you for having me here today. My time's up. I love all of you from the bottom of my heart, and I'm honored that I was asked to speak here today. And I will send a message with my phone number and email. I think I can send it to everyone. I'll double check. I'm not Mr. Computer, but if you have a pen and you want to write it down, I'll give it to you right now. My phone number in the USA is 248-376-4071. And my email is Larry, Larry, S as in Sam, the numbers 0128 @gmail.com. You can email me, you can call me, you can text me. I love you all. Thank you. And I'm going to go on mute.
Thank you very, very much, Larry. That was really great. It was great hearing you. And next up, from Silver Spring, Maryland, we have Todd. Todd, you can unmute yourself and take it away. There we go.
All right. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, I can hear you now, Todd.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Todd, and I'm an addict. Hi. Thank you for all the waves. It means a lot. First of all, my topic today is anxiety and the tools of the NA program. And just to show you what an incredible sense of humor my higher power has, this morning I got up, was a little afraid with these late Shabbats, you're up late sometimes, and I was afraid, what if I sleep late, which occasionally happens. Usually I'm up quite early. But I got up and I came down and I did a little yoga, which I do. I did some meditation. I did some prayer. And I was going upstairs to have a nice, healthy breakfast, and I was in a very good space, very good frame of mind. And I said, maybe it would make sense to turn on the computer and make sure everything's cool and set up so that when I come back down, I can be at this convention and, do what I committed to do here. So the computer turns on and it says, your computer needs an update. Should we update now and restart? I said, oh, sure. I got an hour and a half. I'm good. Update and restart, no problem. Go upstairs. I fix my breakfast, make some coffee. Something tells me, or I had to get something that was down here. I came down. I said, let me just check on the computer. And the message on the computer says, and this is after like a good 40 minutes have gone by. Working on updates, 2% complete. Don't turn off your computer. And this was the kicker. This will take a while. So I didn't know, just in case I was going to come on here and try to sound like a big shot who had, kicked the crap out of anxiety and knew all the answers for everybody. All of a sudden, bang, anxiety, right? Real heavy dose of anxiety. And so just so you know who you're dealing with before I really get started, I now have in front of me not only the computer that's updating, but I've also got a laptop computer, a cell phone, and a Kindle Fire, because just in case everything goes down, I got one more device. And of course, being loaded with anxiety and prepared for everything to go wrong, I have every charger. So I'm running through the house like a madman, grabbing every charger that I got. So everything's plugged in. So I wish you could see me from the other side just to see exactly what's going on here. So anxiety, yeah, God, I think, definitely wanted me to really, really get in touch with a little fresh dose of anxiety before I shared with you on all this. So if you'll humor me, I tried to anchor myself with a little prayer, and I'd like to anchor us all a little bit further just with something from our literature, from Living Clean. It's on page 110. It says, mental illness is real and can be very serious. It is vital that we understand that while the illness itself is an outside issue that needs treatment, our struggles with our mental illnesses and the way they impact our recovery are very much inside issues. We need to make this distinction to ensure that we don't fail to seek additional help, either because of the stigma in the rooms or confusion about the relationship between mental illness and recovery. But it is also essential that we understand that we can feel pretty depressed, anxious, or out of control without having a mental illness. So thank you. I wanted to share that I have a sort of a special joy in being able to share at this particular convention. I got clean in Philadelphia, where I'm from, in 1987. And on a crazy, wild religious trip, which has taken me down all kinds of funny twists and turns, I ended up in Jerusalem in 1993. And I lived in Jerusalem with my wife from 1993 to 1995. And there I attended and was part of the English-speaking meeting in Jerusalem, where there's at least one person here that I remember from back then. And when I left, at the end, my close friends in that English-speaking meeting in Jerusalem that later on became part of this area that's hosting this convention, they gave me this. I went and got it to show you. They gave me this, which is a traditional spice box for the Havdalah service. And they had inscribed on them, I know it was so generous, and I think they were trying to be careful with money at the end, because they wanted to put a little inscription in the bottom, but maybe they had run out of money. And so they were going to write on the bottom, thanks, not thank you, but thanks, because it was shorter. At least I think that was the motive. I don't know. Brad could tell you. And then it said N-A-J for N-A Jerusalem. But there was a mistake that was made. And when they gave this to me, they handed it to me. And actually it was Brad, who's on the meeting now with Laney. They made a mistake, and instead of writing thanks, when they engraved it, they put thank. And when Brad gave it to me with the little party that we had, a few of us, a little send-off that they made for me, I was actually on the eve of my 10th anniversary, if I'm not mistaken, in 1995. That doesn't add up, so that's not right. But anyway, doesn't matter. The point is that Brad said, actually, maybe it wasn't a mistake. It's not that we're thanking you, we're reminding you that you have to thank us for what we've done for you for these last 2 years in Israel. And so it means a lot to me to be able to give back something, I hope, by sharing at this convention today. I'm not an expert in anxiety. I'm not any kind of mental health professional, and I certainly don't have all the answers. But what I do have is I have experience with anxiety. I have a diagnosis with anxiety, of having anxiety. I'll talk about that a little bit, and I've gained some strength, that I am happy to give and share with you. And I also have a measure of hope, because I still struggle with anxiety, and I do realize that it can and does get better when I apply the tools of this program to it. So one of the first, really the first gift of the program that I got in 1987 in Northeast Philadelphia was freedom from active addiction, to not have to live that way anymore, to not have to do what I had been doing compulsively and obsessively. One of the next rewards or lessons that came my way that was such a critical part of early recovery and remains a critical part of my recovery today is that it's not what happens to you that matters, it's what you do with it. I heard that in a Northeast Philadelphia accent, if anybody knows what that sounds like. It's not what happens, it's what you do with it. And I still hear it ringing in my ears. And recovery is an inside job. And the next gift or lesson that came my way was by working these steps with the help of a sponsor and developing a relationship with God and my understanding, and they introduced me to myself. I didn't really even know my own story when I got here. I knew my drug-a-log story. I knew that. And even some of that I wasn't ready to admit to. And I knew some of the things I had done to get drugs, and I knew some of the crazy thoughts in my head, but I didn't really understand how it all fit together. And through a process originally of working a 4-step, but then the discussion that ensued when I did a 5th step, and on through the steps, I got introduced to who I really am and understood my own story. And each time I've gone through the steps, I get a little bit deeper in terms of understanding who I am. And this is not just in a like sort of self-reflective, self-obsessive, navel-gazing kind of way, but in terms of understanding who I am so that I can show up differently in the world. And, the other thing I want to say is like, my story is not one of, like, I came in, I went to meetings every day, I got with a sponsor and called them every day, I did a little bit of step work every single day, and that's not it. I had periods where I was really working the program hard and periods where I got complacent and rested on my laurels, and then the pain would come up and mount, and it would get to a level where I go, holy shit, right? And I was backed into that proverbial corner where I had no way of coming out of it other than to either go back to using or get back into my recovery in a serious way. So that sort of, that pattern continues to this day, but instead of like this, instead of like program, tons of program, and then drop off, and oh my God, now everything's all screwed up. Holy shit, I got to go running with my backside on fire back to the meeting. It's not like that anymore. My threshold for pain has come down, so I can suffer less before I go, hey, I think I'm a beat or two off here, and get back with the people that can give me support and get back to the basics and the things I need to do. In terms of anxiety and in terms of how anxiety played out in my life, while my wife and I were in Israel, we had a baby. And then we came back to America and we had another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And we had 5 children. And it's not what happens, good or bad, in your life, but it's what you do with it. And I didn't have the tools to handle the kind of, I had the mind to say, yeah, we want to have a big family, and that'll be great, and it'll be beautiful, and it'll be wonderful, and we'll be a loving family, and we'll give these kids the values that, that we've come to know and love. But I wasn't thinking about mortgages and tuitions and diapers and screaming and sleeplessness. I didn't know about any of that. And I wasn't thinking about how hard it would be and whether I was really able to step up. Fortunately, through the tools of this program, I was, but without the tools of this program, this whole family would have been doomed, really. And I certainly would have been doomed. To give you a sense of what it was like, I would go through boom and bust cycles, where I would like be working real hard at work and things would seem to be going really well. And then the crack in the armor would happen and I would just melt down. And I was like, I can't go in there. Fuck those people. Fuck this shit. And I would get hopeless, and I would get like filled with this adrenaline, right? And I would just feel like manic and I couldn't do anything. Like I just couldn't do the work. So I would hibernate. And it wasn't that I was depressed, like pulling the covers over my head. It was anxiety. It was like my heart was pounding, right? I could feel the adrenaline and it felt like when I was doing Coke, I mean, it was like amazingly powerful and I sure as shit couldn't go in there. And I sometimes would hibernate inside and do crazy, I would like look up conspiracy theories online or run around and get into sports and go to 4 or 5 baseball games every day in a row and like hang outside the baseball stadium, or get into gambling. A lot of gambling was part of this because I just had to give that excitement somewhere to go. And so I used to go to the racetrack and, got into smoking cigars and pound through cigars. Nothing better for an anxiety attack than stimulants, right? It's insane, but that's what I would do. And sometimes it would get really bad. One time I remember I just made a couple notes to just did a little journaling on some of the times that were especially weird. One time I built a tent in my living room in an apartment. We were damn near broke. There were cockroaches in the apartment, and I built a tent because I just couldn't deal with hearing or seeing anybody. And my wife was so afraid that, like, what the hell's going on? She comes in and there's like a tent. And I'm not talking about like some fancy kind, I'm talking about like a makeshift crazy tent, and she comes and says, like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, get out of here. I was hibernating in this tent because it was like the only place that was safe for me. I had all kinds of comic books or whatever in there. And I was, I was really like crazy. And she called my oldest brother, who came over, and he was like, comes down and he kneels down at the mouth of the tent, crawls in with me, sits there for a minute, talks to me. Everything cool? Yeah. Yeah. He crawls out, he puts his hand out, he goes, come on, let's go outside, take a walk, get a cup of coffee or something. And literally pulled me out of the tent. I don't know how long I would have stayed in there. I remember once being so overcome with anxiety, I was with my wife and I just had to pull the car over. I was on the Beltway, which is a major highway here in Washington, D.C. area. And I got out of the car on the Beltway, crazy thing to do. And I just like, wouldn't get back in until finally I got scared enough that I got back in. Times I can get into like, I can't talk and I just start shrieking, making this like shrieking sound. And it was really, really crazy, and people that know me, especially people that know me professionally over the years, would have a hard time, particularly more recently, would have a hard time believing that I could be in that position, but I've been in that position and clean. I've thrown things, flipped furniture. I once jumped on a wooden board in a stairwell, badly injuring my, not badly injured, not as bad, nearly as bad as it could have been, but injuring the muscles in my ankles and knees. I've had times where I couldn't brush my teeth, because it was just too much. I also have ADD, it was like sometimes it's just too much to concentrate on so much. Like literally, having to remember each tooth, the front, the back, the crowns, the back and the bottom. And, it was like, it was overwhelming. Like even just that very simple act like that, or buttoning a button down shirt to go to work, like remembering like to go from one button to the other in order, could get so overwhelming. I mean, that's what I was stricken with. And there's still a little bit of that there, but not much, thanks to, being able to apply these steps to it. Clutter in the house used to make me nuts. There's times on a couple of family vacations where I just couldn't function and be part of the family and had to step off to the side. And I do want to share like just one, before I get into the solution part of it, while I'm talking about this piece of it, there's one condition I have, and I've never shared about this stuff in this way, like really put all my anxiety stuff out there. But I have a anxiety condition called misophonia, and it's an aversion to certain sounds, and in particular it comes up with chewing noises. And you could hear people's chewing or breathing noises, and it could set me into a rage. I mean, really a rage. Like I literally have visions of myself physically hurting those people, and it's like it's a really weird thing, and it's funny, and sometimes I laugh about it, and sometimes others laugh about it. But when you're in the middle of it, it's not funny at all. When you're like literally fantasizing and envisioning killing someone, because, they're making a noise when they're eating food, and it's really, really, you can imagine what that can do to family life, and especially in the kind of work that I do where there are a lot of like meals out and things like that. So it really was something I needed to get help with. And it was in 2009 at the end of the year when a job I had seemed to be ending, and in fact was ending. It was after the financial meltdown of 08 and 09, and I was just fucked up, and I went to my doctor thinking maybe something was wrong. Maybe I had mono, or, because I was having a little bit of depression with it this time. And she talked to me a little bit, and she said, I think you're either depressed or, I think she suspected like maybe some anxiety was paralyzing me. And she started to offer me a prescription. And I said, no, that's not something for me, because, I'm in NA, and I explained, like, I just didn't want to, and although I know many people do, I didn't want to put something in me to change the way I felt. I was really not open to doing that. And I know many people do it. It's okay for many people. I'm not judging anybody else's choices. But she said to me, well, would you consider it? Would you at least consider it? Because you're in trouble here. And I said, you know what, I'll agree to considering it. And just when I said that, it just gave me some peace to know that if I could open up to doing something that I really, really didn't believe in for me, that maybe there was hope for me. And then the next thing she said, well, would you consider seeing somebody, like a counselor? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, I'm going to give you 3 names. And I stopped there, I put my hand on her arm, and I said, you know what? I'm ready to surrender. You just give me 1 name. And I took the 1 name. I didn't interview him. I just called him up. I said, Dr. Wendy Wong asked me to talk to you. I want to come in. And I started seeing that guy. I saw him for 5 years. He was the one that put the name anxiety to it for me. And he was fortunately also an addiction specialist, and he understood our program. And he started helping me walk through the steps in a new way. And he started encouraging me to not to use him as a sponsor, but to reconnect with my sponsor in a new way. And I went through the steps anew. And I remember when I first got clean in 1987, there was a woman in State College, Pennsylvania. She used to say, her name was Todd. She used to say, I work the first 3 steps before my feet hit the floor every morning. Can't live any other way. Work the first 3 steps before my feet hit the floor. And I began to learn how to do something like that, you know, to get up in the morning and start by remembering who I am, what I am, that I'm powerless over the disease of addiction. But I began to be able to apply that to anxiety also, and to realize that I'm powerless over anxiety too, you know. And it's all mixed up with the addiction for me, because really when I was using drugs that numbed out, you know, I was using drugs that numbed out the anxiety, but also stimulated me to help sort of hedge against the ADD. So there was something about my drugs of choice, my 2 biggest drugs of choice, that had something to do with the way they medically, you know, were experimenting with treating. But I didn't do it for that reason. I just was getting high. But somehow, you know, once again, I discovered that drugs, they weren't the main problem. They weren't my problem. They were my attempt at a solution to the problems that I was already having inside of me, to the disease that I already had cooking inside of me. And so I had to recognize that then they became my main problem, right? Because of where they took me and the kind of behavior that they made me capable of. But the problems were there already. And I needed to admit that I'm powerless over the disease of addiction, and that my life's unmanageable even today. And I do that every day. And when I forget, I get reminded pretty fucking quickly, right? Excuse my language. Sorry, guys. Still a Philly kid. And, you know, the hope that comes in step 2, when I come to believe that it's possible, just possible, that some power greater than myself, whether I call that power God or I call that power anything else, that there's just something that could put things in order and make things okay. That little bit of hope, that possibility, is such an important base to tag up on and stand there for a minute before I try to go to step 3 and then start turning my will and my life over to the care of God. Because for me, going to step 3 and turning my will and my life, making that decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him, I can confuse that with just doing a lot of stuff. Like self-will and turning my will and my life over to the care of God can look the same in my twisted mind. So I say, okay, I've made a decision. I'm turning my will and my life over to the care of God. That means I got to do this, and 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 I got to do this. And I'm in the middle of, you know, this anxiety-fueled, addictive attempt to change things and control things. So I need to tag up on step 2 and say, no, something outside of me can make me different. And then what does it look like to gently make a decision to not try to do that, not try to run my own life, but to allow God and my understanding to do that. And, you know, what that looks like has changed over the years. It changes from day to day to some extent. I needed to, you know, to do the introspection of steps 4 and 5, you know, to like kind of get introduced to myself, like I said. And but then like the real work of step 6 and 7, right? Of like continually taking every problem I have to God and saying, what is it about me that makes me react to this situation or that situation in a way that doesn't help, in a way that makes my life more unmanageable rather than is a healthy discharging of my responsibilities. And really, I found that as somebody down who's I think now down in Florida, a guy named Vito shared years ago, and it rang true for me and still does today. The tools I use to work step 6 and 7, the actions I use to work step 6 and 7 are actions I learned in steps 1, 2, and 3. If that doesn't mean anything to anybody and you want to talk about it some more or introduce me to a better approach, I'm wide open to that, to sharing what I've come to understand or coming to understand it differently. But steps 6 and 7 for me have an awful lot to do with steps 1, 2, and 3. And, you know, the cleaning house that we do in steps 8 and 9, along with the understanding I get in steps 4 and 5 and the potential for freedom I get in steps 6 and 7, they all combine to make my load a little lighter to carry. And when I'm carrying a lighter load, I'm able to live, you know, to like live in the solution and to live, you know, to live in the openness. And I have a former sponsor that used to talk about 10, 11, and 12 as being the steps of openness, right? 10 is the openness to understanding my own behavior. Step 11 is the openness to try to deepen a relationship with God and my understanding, and the openness to seek, you know, that's the verb, right? The first verb anyway in step 11, we sought. So seeking sometimes means whipping out the flashlight and shining it in some cracks and crevices where I might have been afraid to look before, but looking for a deeper connection to the God of my understanding and trying to understand what he, she, it wants from me. And finally, the openness to other people who might need some help, you know, who might benefit from what I have to share, not in a way that's controlling and trying to control their lives or a way that's self-aggrandizing to try to make myself into some sort of guru or something like that, and not in a way that's like insecure either, though, where I'm like going, oh gosh, I hope they like what I have to say. I hope he wants me to be a sponsor. Not that shit either, you know, but just really saying, hey, my story is my story, and whatever it is for me, it is, and whatever it might be for you is up to you, but I'll give it to you in as true a form as I possibly can. So I came to NA, I got freedom from active addiction. I learned that it's not what happens to me, but what I do with it. I got introduced to myself. You know, I got introduced to the idea of God and my understanding in step 3, and then really began to get to know, I believe, God's self as I got into step 11, and I'm still really, really working on these things. I learned to break things down into smaller pieces, and that's just such a huge thing for anxiety. I needed to be open to the idea of medication. I'm going to close on this note. I needed to be open to it. You know, I come from a type of a school of thought in NA where, like, we used to tell people that were on antidepressants, you know, you shouldn't do that. And we don't generally do that in NA anymore. Certainly I don't do that anymore. You know, and I learned that that's something people have to work out for themselves and with proper medical care, because I've seen people die from taking advice that wasn't, you know, maybe was ill-conceived. I needed to be open to it, but I need to, and you know, and I go to meetings now, I hear all kinds of people share about being on this drug or that drug that alters their brain chemistry and they need it. And I don't judge it, and I'm okay with that, you know, and I'm glad that we're able to talk openly about that. But I need to also share that I made the other choice, whether it's right or wrong. It's been my choice to this date. I suppose I could make another choice later, but I'm grateful and satisfied with what I'm getting. And so I chose not to use medication. I used nutrition and exercise and yoga, meditation and prayer and sleep hygiene as a way. And for me, that's been enough for me to function and live and enjoy life without the use of drugs for today. And so, again, I hope that that's not a commercial for you shouldn't do it. It's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is now that we're open to saying, you know, for people talking about what they choose, I want to make sure that it's also, we're also those of us who are walking the very difficult path of doing it another way. Both ways are difficult, you know, that we also can share about it. And so I wanted to just, I hope that didn't piss anybody off too badly, but take what you want and leave the rest. That really, that's just for me though. That's just my choice. I am out of time. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you very much, Todd. And thank you very much, Larry, for those great shares. We now have a 15-minute break. Get up, stretch, move about, do your business, and come back promptly at 6:15 for the meeting, which will be led by Batsheva. It'll be a 15-minute lead with open sharing. There will also be a women's meeting, which will be starting at 6:30 to 7:30. Karen will be speaking in that meeting at 6:30. She'll